CE's report submitted to Beijing setting electoral reform in motion. A move to exempt non-permanent residents in public housing from double stamp duty when they buy their flats. And an Egyptian proposal for a ceasefire in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Good evening. Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying today submitted a report on political reform to the National People's Congress Standing Committee, kickstarting the process toward universal suffrage. The report says there's a need to change the way the chief executive is chosen in 2017. And Leung insisted civic nomination has not been ruled out. But the CE says there's no need to change the basic law when it comes to the 2016 LegCo election. Evelina Leung has more.
The five-step process of Hong Kong's constitutional reform began today. Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying's report was submitted to the National People's Congress Standing Committee in Beijing. Here in Hong Kong, Leung outlined his report on the road towards universal suffrage. Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam also unveiled a report on the first stage of public consultation. The CE's report points out that Hong Kong is generally eager to see the implementation of universal suffrage in the 2017 chief executive election. The discussion should be made in accordance with the Basic Law and the relevant interpretation and decisions of the NPC Standing Committee. It also says the community generally agrees that the chief executive is someone who loves the country and loves Hong Kong. Some did suggest that CE candidates should be nominated through civic nomination and party nomination. But the mainstream opinion is that the Basic Law has clearly stipulated that only the nominating committee has the power to nominate CE candidates. There are also suggestions to increase the size of the nominating committee to a maximum of 1,600, up from 1,200 in the election committee in 2012. Yet there are also views that the size of the nominating committee should remain the same. And society generally agrees the successful implementation of universal suffrage in the 2017 election is a precondition for future LegCo elections by universal suffrage. But it's generally agreed that there is no need to amend the Basic Law regarding the method of forming the council in 2016. The chief executive denied a civic nomination in the 2017 CE election has been ruled out, insisting no decision has been made at this stage.
We haven't ruled out anything in the two reports. While we have views about whether civic nomination is in compliance with the provision of the Basic Law, we do not make choices in this exercise.
Evelina Leung, TVB News.
Chief Secretary Carrie Lam today briefed lawmakers about the government's report on the constitutional reform public consultation and the CE's report to the NPC Standing Committee. But despite having recognized that some in Hong Kong want direct popular nomination of CE candidates, there are still divisions on this issue. Joao De Silva reports.
A nod of recognition to the pan-democratic camp as Carrie Lam briefed legislators on the content of the two reports.
It is worth noting that after the consultation period, there were still considerable views as expressed through participation in polling activities held by civic organizations and the July 1st rally that the element of civic nomination should be included.
She added that those views will be conveyed to Beijing, but radical pan-democrats were not buying it. Leung Kwok-heung was kicked out of the meeting after he threw a prop birdcage and a hammer at the chief secretary. He was followed by Albert Chan, who expressed his discontent by tearing up the consultation report.
For Carrie Lam, he ignored the opinion of the civic nomination, which is supported by the majority of the of the Hong Kong citizen. It was quite clear, the majority view of the Hong Kong people, they do not want any screening, of the candidacy. But this report didn't show that. So it is quite clear this is a fake one.
Inside, pro-establishment legislators expressed their support for the report.
Over 5 months you have conducted, there were over 500 consultation sessions, so I think you have taken on board the views from different sectors. So I would say it's a rather complete picture.
Speaking after the meeting, Labour Party lawmakers were particularly disappointed at hints that the introduction of universal suffrage for all LegCo seats will have to wait until after 2017.
It is outrageous that the report distorts public opinion. It's common knowledge, I would say, very much a consensus among the people of Hong Kong that we should abolish functional constituency.
Lee added, however, that the reports do not completely shut the door on civic nomination, which he says is a victory achieved by the Occupy Central Poll and the July 1st rally. His hopes were echoed by students and human rights activists.
After the 1st of July rally and also the civil referendum, you can see that their attitude become quite moderate, and they didn't want to kill the civil nomination directly. So we believe that direct actions of the citizens can change our fate.
Even though this is only the first stage in the 5 steps towards universal suffrage, tensions continue to run high, not least because the reports insist that the power to nominate candidates is vested only in the nominating committee and that future chief executives must love the country and love Hong Kong. João da Silva, TVB News.
The Legislative Council continued discussions this morning on the Stamp Duty Amendment Bill. Lawmakers from a number of political parties supported an amendment to exempt non-permanent residents from the double stamp duty when they buy public housing flats under the Tenants Purchase Scheme. Ronnie Samtani reports.
The controversial amendment to the stamp duty bill was passed after hours of debate, but lawmakers from the Federation of Trade Unions expressed concerns about the side effects of the move.
We can see that there are loopholes in the DSD net, and we are afraid that the market will have the message that the DSD is useless or is not effective at all, so that we are afraid that the market prices will be stimulated.
The amendment proposed by Democratic Party legislator Wu Chi-wai allows non-permanent residents living in public housing flats to be exempted from the double stamp duty when they buy their units under the Tenants Purchase Scheme, or TPS. Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury Chen Ka-keung noted that there have been only 60 TPS cases involving non-permanent residents since the property cooling measure was implemented.
If we provide an exemption clause in the bill for transactions involving TPS, it will affect the integrity of our measures, and this will create loopholes and will send a confusing message to the market.
Chan added that an exemption wouldn't help much, as non-permanent residents would still have to pay the buyer's stamp duty. But members from across the political divide showed support for the amendment.
There's no way that it can be used for speculation. I think you were too hasty in formulating the policy.
The amendment was passed 44 votes in favor, 6 against. Ronnie Samtani, TVB News.
Bold moves ahead of today's BRICS summit in Brazil. The 5 emerging market powers plan to launch their own version of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. Plus, President Xi Jinping has vowed to secure better representation for all BRICS nations.
BRICS leaders from Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are meeting for the bloc's 6th summit in the Brazilian city of Fortaleza today and Wednesday. Most BRICS countries suffer from an economic downturn. This is why Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff and Russian President Vladimir Putin have put signing off on the creation of a development bank #1 on their agenda. Fed up with the U.S. dominating the global financial system, the new development bank will give BRICS countries an alternative source of finance from the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. Some economists give the move a thumbs up.
Last few years, the BRICS still contributed close to half of global growth. So that's how much. That's in terms of how much contribution these countries are contributing.
Notwithstanding China, other economists insist BRICS countries are in economic turmoil.
Almost all the BRICS countries now facing difficulties. So I think this time it's really indeed to sit down to discuss the issue, to discuss the future about BRICS, because now currently people are kind of joking. BRICS now only one maybe BRIC left, it's China.
Shanghai is said to be on the top of the list for the bank's headquarters, and Russia is vying for the first 5-year presidency. As for China's contribution, President Xi Jinping made certain promises. He said China will dedicate itself to perfecting the role of developing countries play in international affairs to give them better representation and a greater say. Xi also pledged to build stronger ties with India and South Africa. He also added that he and President Putin will jointly promote the development of the China-Russia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership.
Israel's government has approved an Egyptian proposed peace deal that would end the week-long shelling across the Gaza Strip. The militant group Hamas has so far acknowledged diplomatic movement on stopping the conflict, but has not yet formally accepted the proposal. Rocket fire from Gaza, however, was reported after the proposal of the deal. Alan Bookneer reports.
Egypt's foreign minister outlined the initiative to the Arab League Monday, saying the ceasefire would be followed by talks in Cairo aimed at ending the hostilities. An Israeli government spokesman confirmed the country's security cabinet agreed to the proposal and said it's now up to Hamas.
If Hamas rejects the Egyptian proposal, we of course are ready to continue our operation, to intensify operation as need be, to protect our citizens.
The deputy chief of Hamas acknowledged in a pre-recorded message that it had been contacted about the ceasefire, but gave no indication if the proposal would be accepted. More than 180 people have been killed in Gaza, most of them civilians, under Israel's constant bombardment of the region. There have been no major casualties on the Israeli side, largely due to its Iron Dome defense system. Meanwhile, an Israeli court has ordered 3 suspects in the killing of a Palestinian teenager held until the end of the week. The lawyer for one of the accused expects charges against them to be filed on Friday.
It's not a secret that they're going to accuse them in the murder of this Arab guy and in the kidnap attempt of another guy a day before, some of them, and maybe in other events.
The July 2nd murder is believed to have been a revenge attack for the killing of 3 Israeli teenagers that in a large part led to the hostilities over the last week. Alan Bookneer, TVB News.
A subway train derailed in Moscow today, killing at least 19 people and injuring 150. The disaster happened during the morning rush hour. Authorities say a power surge triggered an alarm, causing the train to stop abruptly. It was struck between 2 stations as several cars derailed inside a tunnel. About 200 people were evacuated. Passengers said they saw smoke and that they were trapped. Some managed to escape by walking along the tracks inside the tunnel. Officials don't believe foul play was involved.
British Foreign Secretary William Hague announced his surprise resignation Monday. Hague has been Britain's most senior diplomat for the past 4 years. He is standing down with immediate effect to take a more junior ministerial post. He will be replaced by current Defense Secretary Philip Hammond. British Prime Minister David Cameron is expected to announce sweeping changes to his cabinet today, ahead of what's expected to be a closely fought national election next May. His Conservative Party has been repeatedly criticized for the lack of women in senior cabinet posts. Still to come, a Consumer Council test report on anti-wrinkle face creams. A freak hailstorm in Siberia. And Scolari resigns as Brazil's coach.
If you want to save lives and catch the bad guys, pay attention.
A building collapses in Moscow. The work of a man who disguises his killings in the headlines of everyday tragedy.